When you think of criminals, it's easy for one's mind to wander to the lawless outlaws of the West. Those for whom life is a rough, hard, violent experience, packed with virtually daily, daring, direct action, whose unethical deeds arise from a filthy world of constant struggle. It's easy enough to look at these people and say with absolute certainty that they are what's wrong with society, and it's solely their viciousness and malice that denies the rest of the world from becoming a utopia. But as I'm sure you're well aware, life isn't that simple, and sometimes the greatest threat to good people comes not from those you might view as beneath you, but rather from the very top of the merciless human food chain. In Red Dead Redemption 2 we encounter one such villain, and though his actual physical presence is sparing, the damage and impact of his actions, of his avarice, is as incessant as it is indiscriminate. So join me today as we explore the crimes of Leviticus Cornwall. To begin, we must first address an opening question. Who the hell is Leviticus Cornwall?
Now, suddenly we're about to rob a train.
What choice have we got?
Leviticus Cornwall's no joke, Dutchie.
Who is Leviticus Cornwall?
He's a big railway magnate, sugar dealer, oil man.
Well, how good for him. Sounds like he has more than enough to share.
Simply put, Leviticus Cornwall is an incredibly wealthy businessman whose fortune is built upon the oil industry and various other ventures. The Vandalin gang encounter his outfit as early as Chapter 1. After catching wind of the O'Driscolls planning to rob a train of his as it passed through the Grizzlies, they hijack the heist.
Arthur and Micah, you head straight for the back. That's what we're after. Mr. Cornwall's private car.
The heist goes swimmingly, aside from perhaps in every single way, yet despite the setback and the plan going completely off the rails, the siege of the train is ultimately successful. Arthur Morgan, with the ever-so-welcome aid of Lenny Summers, managed to bring the train to a stop, albeit not without annihilating some of Leviticus Cornwall's employees and lobbing the train operator off a bridge. After another gunfight beside the now stationary train, which serves to indicate the power and might of the man we are robbing, our focus turns to Cornwall's private car.
What are you boys planning on doing in there? Listen to me. We don't want to kill any of you. Any more of you. I give you my word, but trust me, we will.
I work for Leviticus Cornwall.
Come on, boys.
We got our orders.
Okay, you asked for it.
We ain't
5,
opening this door.
4, 3, 2, 1. Seems our friends have gone deaf. Wake them up a little.
Noticeably, his remaining employees have decided to hide in his armoured car. The fact that it's armoured might suggest a couple of things. For instance, the notion of paranoia, perhaps even self-importance, or even importance in general. The poor employees caught in the middle of this also drop his name as if it's supposed to mean something. This is a man with enemies. But, you know what? A little dynamite opens all doors.
We don't want to kill you. We just want to rob your boss.
And though the man himself isn't present, within his private car we come face to face with his likeness, not to mention his wealth and opulence as indicated by the sophisticated decorations. And now with access to this portable office of Cornwall's, we can finally scour it for some information. Take for instance the letter on this rounded little table. It's a letter addressed to the man from the Leyland Oil Development Company that reads as follows. Dear Mr. Cornwall, we are yet to receive payment of $2,000 for the initial phase of exploration at the Wapiti Indian Reservation, Ambarino, as agreed in the contract between Cornwall Kerosene and Tar and the Leyland Oil Development Company, dated November 9th, 1898. On receipt of the funds, we will proceed with phases 2 and 3 of the project and present you with a detailed report of our findings within the month. Yours respectfully, James Critchley, Head of Accounts, Leyland Oil Development Company. This suggests Cornwall has interests in a Native American reservation, in his pursuit for precious oil. As for the findings of Lenny and Micah,
Railroad contracts, invoices, blah, blah, blah. You got anything?
Not really. Sugar imports from the Spanish West Indies. A lot of sugar. Some fancy new boat he's ordered from Europe.
I am not robbing another boat as long as I live.
a picture is swiftly painted that we're dealing with a man whose fingers are in many, many pies. And while it isn't relevant to the immediate act of robbery, Mr. Cornwall's portfolio will become of some relevance later on. At the top end of the fancy carriage we can find another letter on a desk, this time from the Jameson Mining and Coal Company, and it reads as follows. Dear Leviticus, thank you for the telegram and for your continued interest in the Jameson Mining Company. However, any news you have received of mismanagement or financial difficulties at the mine in Annisburg are simply fake, and I would urge you to question your sources. The coal industry is quite different from the oil industry in a number of ways, so I certainly remain open to a business meeting at your convenience to exchange ideas and educate each other on our respective areas of corporate expertise. I would also be delighted to host you in Annisburg and give you a personal tour of the mine and its associated facilities. I look forward to further correspondence. Yours sincerely, Archibald Jameson. This would appear to be a versatile businessman with varied interests and perhaps sharp intelligence. If the books on the shelves are any indicator, he weaponizes that intelligence to gain an advantage in any business scenario. For the time being, however, that is of no importance to the Van der Linde gang, who happen upon some bonds in a lockbox and crack on.
They worth anything? Oh, sure. Bearer bonds. I think we can probably sell these pretty easily. Well done. Now, would you get rid of all of this?
The train?
Yeah, get it out of here.
What about them?
What do you think?
I don't know.
It's up to you. Kill them, leave them here, take them with you on the train. Just make sure they don't send no folk after us.
Okay.
See you back at camp. When you get back, we'll be moving on. The rest of you, let's ride!
At this point, the gang is oblivious to the powerful enemy they've made, and though Cornwall will be certain that he's been robbed before too long, figuring out who by when the only surviving witnesses saw masked men approach at night is unlikely to yield any names. And the following newspaper article that can be read following this event would suggest the Van der Linde gang's involvement is yet to be discovered. Train robbed. Pitched battle leaves many dead. Outlaws send train on driverless journey. Owned by Leviticus Cornwall. A private train owned by the railroad sugar and oil magnate Leviticus Cornwall was robbed in broad daylight by masked outlaws headed north towards the Grizzlies. The outlaws boarded and stopped the train shortly after it had departed from West Elizabeth. Initial cables, sent as of printing time, indicate the bloody takeover occurred in order to steal railroad bonds from the personal car of Mr. Cornwall. Shortly after the robbery, the train was set in motion without a driver or crew, barreling dangerously through the area at a high rate of speed. The train was eventually brought to a stop by engineers and lawmen north of Annisburg, who reported a scene of violent struggle and bloody carnage on board. Some engineers and guards from the train survived the slaughter, but were too startled to report much information of value to authorities. Now, what's more likely? Is a wealthy oil tycoon going to let the blatant disrespect of robbery slide purely because, in the grand scheme of his overall fortune, not a single dent has been made, or that he'll allocate resources to identifying and neutralizing this menace, not allowing the outlaws to get away with this on principle? Perhaps he subscribes to the ideology that, should you give a thief an inch, he'll take a mile, and therefore a successful robbery means more might follow. As of the dawn of Chapter 2, the Van der Linde gang are none the wiser to the approach such a wealthy individual might adopt, nor do they, aside from perhaps Hosea Matthews, seem particularly bothered about the agency of such a character. But you know what, in a one-off event where there are no patterns to follow and no witnesses identifying any one member of the Van der Linde gang at the train robbery, for the time being at least, there isn't a right lot to go off. However, as you're almost certainly aware, hopefully, if you happen to be watching this video, which will account for everyone who just heard that, never mind, this is far from the last we see of good old Leviticus Cornwall. For instance, we have this newspaper article, Cornwall expansion continues, from commodities to the Caribbean, requests government protection, cites robberies. Leviticus Cornwall is a well-known expansionist. A railroad into every expanse of this country is only a matter of time, he declared when launching the Cornwall Southern and Eastern Railways. He builds the trains and uses them to ship goods for Cornwall Freight and Commodities, Cornwall Kerosene and Tar, and his other business concerns. His sugar business reaches into the Caribbean, and not a week goes by without a ship ferrying Cornwall sugar calling into America. He is now calling for government support to bring protection to industries working to improve conditions in the West after a string of robberies. Mr. Cornwall, who has been known to speak glibly about the evil effects of education upon certain kinds of lesser intellects, is one of the wealthiest men in the region and requires numerous private guards to protect his person and multiple concerns. Despite questionable accounts of poor conditions at plantations run by Cornwall employees, his goods flow throughout much of the United States, and Congress has so far shown little appetite for breaking up what many people call a regional monopoly of services. Alongside his private militia, he is believed to be one of the principal clients of the Pinkerton Agency in the region. Now, this tells us Cornwall's influence in this region as far as business is concerned is relatively absolute, and also we learn he's known for dealing with the Pinkerton National Detective Agency, a private investigation and security firm that are no strangers to union busting, which is likely to come in handy to a tycoon such as Cornwall. But incidentally, they also happen to be on the tail of the Van der Linde gang, and have been since Blackwater, if not prior. And as bad news for Dutch's boys, they have their suspicions regarding the gang's involvement in the Cornwall train robbery.
Oh, Dutch. I haven't seen him for months.
That's so, because I heard a guy fitting his description robbed a train belonging to Leviticus Cornwall up near Granite Pass.
Oh, ain't that a little old-fashioned nowadays?
Apparently not.
Now, if the Plonkertons have this knowledge, then it's not a stretch to imagine that Cornwall, via being informed by the Pinkertons, likely has a pretty good idea who robbed him too. And with that, the chances of future run-ins exponentially increases, especially considering we are well and truly in this monopolist's territory. For it's out here in the heartlands that we can find Cornwall Kerosene and Tar. This hideous blot on the landscape is pumping that sweet, rich freedom juice around the clock. Not only is this establishment worked tirelessly, it's also guarded viciously, as we find out when we're sent to steal an oil wagon for the purposes of robbing another train, which will no doubt also be attributed by the Pinkertons to the activities of Dutch Van der Linde. But this talk of regional monopoly and the presence of this factory means there may very well be examples of how Leviticus here deals with his competition. And sure enough, in the heartlands a fair way south of the oil fields claimed by Cornwall, we can find a lonesome derrick. It exists in a sorry old state and clearly hasn't been maintained for some time, and yet there are signs that there's still oil present here. However, at this abandoned site we can also find the corpse of a man, and on his decomposing remains we can find this letter. Its sender is identified as Cornwall Kerosene and Tar and reads as follows. Dear Mr. Varley, it is very regrettable that you have rejected the various extremely generous purchase offers presented to you by Cornwall Kerosene and Tar. Mr. Cornwall has obligingly consented to allowing you a grace period of a further 3 weeks to reconsider your position, and we strongly advise that you do so. After that, I would be very concerned about a company of your size being able to continue to compete on price in the state of New Hanover and to secure acceptable rates for railroad transportation. We look forward to hearing from you soon and, as always, wish you the best of good fortune in all your endeavours. Yours faithfully, Cameron Spence, Vice President, Cornwall Kerosene and Tar. And so it would seem Cornwall is attempting to bully Mr. Varley into selling, well, the land he's claimed, and in the event Varley refused, issued a poorly disguised threat to maliciously render this significantly smaller business uneconomical. First by leveraging Cornwall kerosene and tar's much higher output to outprice Varley, and then by extorting him with transportation costs because they control the rails too. As for how this grisly scene came to occur, it is unclear whether an accident simply happened, for instance, an explosion which might explain the condition of the body, and indeed the condition of this derrick itself, or if something more sinister happened here and was simply made to look like an accident. Either way, the absence of any Cornwall kerosene and tar personnel being present, combined with the fact that the site is entirely abandoned, would suggest Cornwall's attempts to buy Mr. Varley out weren't to take over his oil operation, but simply to eliminate the competition. And though this is conjecture, I have a hard time believing the competition eliminated itself, as that, though entirely possible, and there is no real evidence to the contrary, just seems awfully convenient. I'm not saying the big man himself came down here in person and got his hands dirty, but perhaps he sanctioned it, or indeed sanctioned the sanctioning of it, putting as many layers between himself and the kill order as possible in order to completely disguise any involvement in such a prospective hit. Sadly, however, it's too easy to dismiss this as a one-off thing. Fortunately for us, it might not be. South of Valentine, we can find the abandoned town of Limpany. What used to be a lovely small town has since been ravaged by a fire. How such a fire would begin and spread is unclear. However, throughout the town we can find these blue Cornwall kerosene and tar barrels, oftentimes strewn about in varying conditions, perhaps suggesting they were placed at strategic points to ensure the entire town burned. And as evidence that it happened very quickly, the prisoners in the jail are still there, and would appear they suffocated in the blaze. Now, unfortunately, all the presence of Cornwall barrels suggests is that Cornwall kerosene and tar did business with the town, and doesn't indicate if they were complicit in the fire that destroyed it. Furthermore, we have no avenue of reasoning for why Cornwall kerosene and tar would risk burning down an entire town, much less why they would use their own barrels to do it, though perhaps their previous doing business with the town might cover that up and provide some plausible deniability. In Red Dead Online, Madame Nazar will make a cryptic comment about what happened here being avoidable, which would appear to lean into the idea that what happened here was an accident and was only exaggerated by the presence of flammable barrels labelled Cornwall kerosene and tar. These can be found in other towns, and if you shoot them, sometimes a liquid spills out. Should you shoot the pool of liquid that gathers, it may catch fire. But just like with the derrick, this is not evidence that Cornwall, or indeed Cornwall kerosene and tar, were directly involved in any wrongdoing. However, as something of an anecdotal contribution, we can see Leviticus Cornwall's complete disregard for Valentine when we finally come face to face with him at the end of Chapter 2. After a whole chapter of wreaking havoc in the Heartlands, Cornwall finally makes his presence known to us.
To your good health.
Thank you.
Vanderland! Get out here! Get out What here the now! hell? Vanderland! You don't know me, but you keep robbing me! My name is Leviticus Cornwall. I am not a man to be messed with by the likes of you! Get out here before I have these men killed! What do you think? Get out here,
Well,
you depraved piece of trash!
You start spinning the yarn. When I think the moment's right, I'll make a
I
move.
got where I am by letting
Why
scum
not?
like you rob from me? Vanderland, you're done! Now get out here now! Deal with this nonsense.
Sure enough, before any shooting starts, the force to be reckoned with makes himself scarce, but his dialogue reveals a few things about his character. Like we already went over, he doesn't view tolerating robbery with sustaining his wealth. He also threatens to kill John and Leopold Strauss in the street with his own thugs. He doesn't care who sees, because though such an act is surely not legal, entirely speaking, he's wealthy enough for it to not be a problem. And as the gunfight that follows would suggest, he's entirely unfazed by turning the town of Valentine into a battlefield. He has the moral disposition to cause destruction, he has the wealth to cause destruction, and also the wealth to get away with it. But he doesn't stand and fight himself. He sends his goons, his thugs, his hired militia, likely employees of his, and has no regard for their well-being either. That being said, I doubt he had the foresight to picture his virtual army being at a disadvantage against 3 gunmen. However, if he was able to locate Dutch in a saloon in Valentine, chances are good he's been on our tail for a while at this point and could have chosen a better site for this confrontation. His disregard for human life, therefore, one way or another rears its ugly head. What this confrontation reveals to the gang, however, is that Leviticus Cornwall is willing to fight them. If not personally, absolutely with his resources. Unfortunately, money can't buy player character status, so thanks to the sharp shooting of Arthur Morgan, Dutch, Arthur, John, and Leopold Strauss survive the chaos. And here's the newspaper article that can be read regarding this gun battle. A horror show. Blood in the streets of Valentine. Lawman, Dutch's gang, Cornwall guards face off. Dead everywhere. Families grieving. Coroner overwhelmed. Valentine residents say it sounded like the Indian Wars had resumed on their streets. At first, shots rang out as women and the feeble ran for cover. It soon turned into an unrelenting cacophony of gunfire. Lawman traded shots with members of the notorious Vanderlyn gang who had come to town to rob and steal. A few agents known to be working for Leviticus Cornwall joined in the fray, quickly creating a scene of unmitigated chaos. Valentine is well known in the region as a rough-around-the-edges livestock town with some insalubrious visitors, and altercations are not uncommon. The recent spate of violence is, however, unprecedented. Bar fights in the Smithfield Saloon are too frequent. Many are still in shock at the recent violence, including a brutal massacre at 6 Point Cabin. Local officials are calling on state and federal authorities for assistance in restoring order. The article refrains from mentioning that Cornwall was responsible for the shootout occurring within the town's limits, and even goes so far as to refer to Valentine as a fairly run-down place that tends to attract insalubrious, seedy, or otherwise unwholesome visitors. The article's intention is to not make the reader feel sympathy for Valentine. Could this be an instance of Cornwall's influence, or just a symptom of the young nation's apathy in general? Either way, I'm sure the angle suits the businessman's version of events, and the article disguises his willingness to reduce Valentine to a graveyard, probably because the outlet doesn't want him coming after them too. And the wealthy are nothing if not able to influence the media's perception of them. Now there's one last, perhaps Cornwall relevant activity that we can observe in Chapter 2, and that comes in what's supposed to be a laid-back hunting trip with Charles Smith.
What you preparing for?
The greatest of gifts.
An unguarded stagecoach?
No, you simple-minded fool. Bison.
Bison?
Bison. From which you can get anything. There's some over on the plains, I believe. I saw a couple a long way off.
Good luck.
You want to come with me? I'll show you how we hunt one.
Sure. Why not?
On the horse ride over to the plains, Charles explains how his unnamed people used to move with the bison, and that the majestic animals were seen as the center of all life. After quickly locating a herd and bringing one down, skinning the bison and taking its horns, Charles notices something in the distance that he wants to go and check on. Upon closer inspection, he and Arthur discover 3 bison that have been shot and left to rot. As they search further afield, they find more dead bison, eventually leading them to a campfire. It's here where Charles and Arthur confront and interrogate the poachers.
Did you fools shoot those bison?
What's your problem?
I said, did you fools shoot those bison? Calm down, you black or red bastard, whatever the fuck you are. Did you shoot them? Yes, we did. We shot them bison, we'll shoot you too if you don't get.
What business is it of yours? What? We...
It's not business of mine!
Good God, you're crazy! I got a family. A family. Don't shoot me.
Stand back, Charles. I'll get you some answers. Why are you killing those bison and leaving them to rot?
I don't know what you're talking about.
God damn it, tell us or you're dead.
Oh, okay. We were paid to kill as many as we could and make it look like it was Indians.
Presumably he's referring to the Wapiti, whom we're yet to encounter, and these poachers were paid to senselessly slaughter the bison and implicate them. So, somebody with the resources and the cruelty to sanction such an activity has an interest in escalating tensions between the Wapiti and the white man. Fortunately, we know of somebody who may very well fit that bill. If you recall robbing Cornwall's personal railway car, we know Cornwall is interested in exploring the Wapiti reservation in search of oil. And of course, that's a tricky thing to realise when people are living there. People whose homes you'll need to destroy to get at these sites. Though the man is arguably far too cunning to openly drive the Wapiti away, based on everything we know about him so far, it's certainly not outlandish to believe he'd resort to such ruthless, unethical tactics to drive them away more indirectly. In fact, as far as suspects go for such a thing, he fits the bill perfectly. This is exactly how he conducts his schemes, but we'll come back to this particular note a tad later on. For now, it's time to move on to Cornwall's involvement in Chapter 3, where the gang's antics take them south to Lemoyne. It's worth stating that Cornwall doesn't actually show up in person again until Chapter 6, having only 2 actual appearances in the game. However, in the 3rd chapter there are still references and events pertaining to him. For instance, we can read this article regarding his steamboat that reads, "A modern steam marvel. Cornwall orders fastest steamship in the world, expected to arrive within the week. Industrialist and rail magnate has ordered delivery of the nation's first turbine-powered steamship, a marvel of engineering from the United Kingdom, first unveiled as an experimental vessel in 1894. It was then demonstrated as the fastest ship on water. Now beginning commercial production, the Turbinia class, as it was first christened, is expected to be a private vessel for Mr. Cornwall, built to his exact specifications and including a level of opulence and grandeur not seen on modern sailing vessels. For reference, that's one of these lengthy fellows. At the time, the Turbinia was the fastest steamship in the world, topping out at 34 knots, which equates to 39 miles per hour. Now, as you can imagine, getting a hold of one of these would certainly require wealth. In fact, I think in the real world, it was a unique vessel, only built as pioneering experimental technology and never entering mass production, so to speak, at least not in this form. I think turbine-powered steamships evolved pretty quickly past it after that. But if you're curious, don't take my word for it, it's not a massively important point with regards to today's video, so my research is far from bulletproof. Anyway, the fact it's believed to be a personal vessel for Cornwall would suggest he's a man of expensive taste. And if you had his kind of money, you'd probably be the same. That's fair enough. Away from his maritime interests, Cornwall's presence in Chapter 3 is quite light, and the gang are probably of the belief that if they leave him alone, then Cornwall will do the same. But along comes Uncle with plans to rob a wagon.
Very easy pickings. As long as we get paid or you get shot, I'm happy.
You are a sick man, Arthur Morgan.
A very sick man indeed.
At first it seems like a bog-standard wagon robbery and nobody's aware who the wagon actually belongs to. However, that does get clarified before too long.
Stop the wagon! I said, stop the damn wagon! Whoa! Now, don't try anything stupid, and we won't do anything unkind.
You know, boys, I don't want to get shot, but this is a mistake. I work for Cornwall Kerosene and Tar, Mr. Leviticus Cornwall.
Oh, great.
So you know him?
Who doesn't?
I hear he's rich enough to share the wealth around and not miss it too much.
Oh, he'll miss it.
Okay, why don't you check out around the back? Arthur, help me out here.
Yes, Charles, say his name in the middle of a robbery, why don't you? Not only does the gang commit to this robbery before they realise who they're robbing, they also kind of underestimated the wagon's security.
Shit! Hey! Think I see something!
Oh, great.
Let's go! Arthur, let's go! Yeah!
And now the gang find themselves being pursued by Leviticus Cornwall's men again, putting themselves in the unfavourable position of being a constant pain in his backside. It also can't bode well for their own well-being beyond that, considering they're being pursued by the Pinkertons, and the Pinkertons are in Leviticus Cornwall's pocket too. Unwilling to risk leading Cornwall's men back to camp, the gang hide out in an old run-down barn. However, even though some hours pass and it's now nighttime, Cornwall's men are still searching.
Damn! Hey, let's just keep this calm. See what happens.
Is this your place? Kinda. And you didn't hear nothing? Why don't you just tell me, partner, what you heard? Tell me what you heard. I don't... Maybe I heard some noises out by the barn a while ago. Ain't me.
Better not be. All right.
Coop forth. Low. Go check out the barn. Sir.
Well, the place looks deserted enough.
Sure. You head inside, I'll go round the back.
Attempts to hide proved to be in vain, and now we find ourselves in yet another shootout with Leviticus Cornwall's unrelenting men. After a short gunfight and the barn burning down, the gang eventually managed to lose Cornwall's boys in the woods.
Y'all still alive?
Yeah, just about.
Yeah, I'll deal with you later.
We got some money, didn't we?
Sure, but now we got Cornwall on our backs.
It was an honest
Hey,
mistake.
leave it. Come on, get out of here. Every man split up. Come on, run, quick.
Good luck, gents.
Stay quiet and move.
And here's what the news has to say about this particular confrontation. Coach ambushed, assailants flee, burned barn. Search continues for robbers. A supply coach operated by Cornwall Industries was ambushed just south of Scarlet Meadows in Lemoyne. The band of thieves, numbering 4 in all, ordered the guards to abandon the coach. They then immediately fled with the stolen coach. The victims of the coach robbery gave pursuit to the local farm, where the assailants were discovered later that night. During a massive gunfight, the highwaymen set fire to a barn which burned to the ground. They escaped to the woods in the south, and authorities are searching the area for their whereabouts. As you can imagine, some details are slightly off here. The gang, for instance, didn't make off with the coach, they made off on horseback with items stolen from it. And the barn burning down was more of a joint effort in the shootout than anything. No details are egregiously off as such, but it would seem that some details have been twisted to make it seem like an act of villainy by 4 unknown assailants, rather than a shootout between 4 unknown assailants and Leviticus Cornwall's men who are more than happy for the fight. Anyway, that's kind of it for Cornwall's involvement in Chapter 3, outside of little details observing his influence spreading this far. But by Chapter 4, when we arrive in the city of Saint-Denis, there is noticeably far more of that to observe. As it would seem, his name is all over the place. And what else would you expect from a man who dominates the realm of industry? It's apparent that Cornwall has boundless influence here, and we're sure to find out the extent of that at the mayor's party.
So, this is Saint Denis High Society.
Yes, apparently so.
And all these people, these are friends of yours, Senor Bronte?
No, not quite, not quite. But they certainly are afraid of me. Like that one. See that wretch? He's the mayor. Henri Lemieux. He'll do anything for $1, and I mean anything.
Politics is a foul business.
Yes. Oh, and that one too. That is Alberto Fusar. He owns a sugar plantation out on the island, and he comes here to whore and despoil himself. oh, the Redskins. I have no sympathy for them, because whoever is stupid enough to get tricked by the Americans, no, they get what they deserve, huh? Yes, and a letter to the mayor. Oh yeah, that'll save you.
Now, we've already gone over the Wapiti and their struggles and how that may tie into Cornwall. But we also learn about a fellow named Alberto Fusar, the owner of a sugar plantation who comes here to engage in debauchery. And it would seem he's also linked to Cornwall, as we can read this in the following article. Guarma Island Sugar Boom. Fusar called friend of the US. Cuban imports on the rise. Rail baron and industrial titan Leviticus Cornwall stood next to a ship unloading Cuban sugar from the island of Guarma and hailed a new era of cooperation between the two countries. After making 2 trips to the region to tour sugar plantations and signing an exclusive purchase order with the governor of Guarma, imports are on the rise. Cornwall has called local governor Alberto Fusar a great friend of America. However, the boom is undercutting the US sugar industry and resulting in the loss of American jobs. Detractors call Fusar a controversial figure who is flamboyant at times and cruel at others, and has Guarma under a quasi-military rule. His security force is reportedly feared across the island, with plantation workers often working 14-hour shifts to keep up. And thus we've learned Cornwall is in bed with the tyrannical governor of Guarma. These claims of cruelty, tyranny and quasi-military rule are verifiable upon our visiting of Guarma in Chapter 5. Despite being viewed fairly positively from the outside, he's a ruthless dictator who works those employed at his plantations to death. He's brutal and sadistic and enjoys torturing those he views as beneath him. Knowing this, for him to be an ally of Cornwall's can only reflect badly on good old Leviticus's own moral leanings. Because, as suggested by the article, if Cornwall has spent any time within Fusar's territory, then he's seen the suffering he inflicts, but because Fusar benefits his business too, he doesn't care. There are certainly, however, far less convoluted examples of Cornwall's disregard for human life, such as reducing Valentine to a battlefield, as we've already explored. But Guarma's worse than that. The people here are either indentured servants or political prisoners, rendering them effective slaves. Cornwall may very well be benefiting from that too. As for the other face we're introduced to at the mayor's party, the mayor himself.
Henri Lemieux. I hope you're enjoying my party.
The mayor.
Allegedly.
There's quite a place you got here.
It's not mine, and the city is horribly in debt, but we can still put on a good show. Do you know Evelyn Miller?
My lord. The writer?
Well, we seem to have another deranged drunkard on our hands.
Shall we?
My lord, they're fantastic.
Excuse me, madam. Excuse me, pardon. Monsieur, please. Mr. Cornwall was quite insistent, I'm afraid. He shouted down the telephone for several minutes.
Mr. Cornwall is a horse's ass, and a bad horse.
I'm very sorry, sir.
It's not your fault. I'm a fool for trusting him. I'll come in and sign it in a minute. Let me enjoy the fireworks.
Of course.
Did he say something about Cornwall? Yes. Find out what. Sure.
So it would seem he's, albeit begrudgingly, in cahoots with Cornwall somehow. Lemieux claims he was a fool for trusting him, so it's unclear how sour that business dealing actually is. However, as we discover in our time in Saint Denis, the mayor is hardly the least corrupt individual ever himself. For Leviticus Cornwall to have that power over him to strong-arm an agreement for whatever deal has been made would suggest that he's pouncing on some weaknesses, and doesn't really care to be particularly well liked, as the mayor referred to him as a horse's arse. It is, however, unclear what Cornwall is trying to force the mayor to sign, because even though Arthur is sent to tail a fellow to find out, any interactions with the document in question occurs in a cutscene.
Mr. Leviticus Cornwall. Top secret. Extremely confidential. Very interesting.
Annoyingly, this document is never brought up again, so we have limited information to speculate about its contents. There is, however, a letter we can read from the mayor to Angelo Bronte, a local businessman who's a bit of an organised crime boss himself, so the mayor is no stranger to swimming in muddy waters. In fact, in his stranger mission you realise how dirty he is himself, and Cornwall of course has no problem dealing with corrupt officials. But were I to speculate as to what the letter might be about, since it's never brought up again, I can't imagine it's awfully relevant to the perpetual struggle of the Van der Linde gang as such, as every other event of Chapter 4 appears to arise from somewhere else and not this letter. So the contents of the document are a mystery in their own right. But it might have something to do with the Wapiti chief Rain's Fall and his son Eagle Flies, constantly lobbying officials with the aid of Evelyn Miller in the city of Saint Denis, in hopes it might save their land.
Can I say something rude?
Sure.
The mayor thinks you robbed him. To be clear, he wasn't very upset about it. He rather liked you.
Okay.
Do you, well, I mean to say, can you steal things?
Is there a reason you're asking me to incriminate myself, Mr. Miller?
Well, I'm sorry. Have you met? This is Rain's Fall, a great chief, and his son, Eagle Flies.
Gentlemen?
We saw you in the wagon train crossing the river at Cumberland Falls. And at the party, you were upstairs.
You have great powers of observation.
Yes, my people, if we are even a people anymore. We've fought hard. We've made peace treaties, and those treaties were broken. And we've been moved and punished and moved.
I'm sure.
And now I am told we are to be moved again.
Clearly contravening the peace treaty signed 3 years ago.
This will lead to war.
No, my son, it will not. We cannot fight another war. They have got stronger, and we have become far weaker, Mr. Morgan.
Well, it's bad business.
It's to do with oil. I know it is, but I need the proof. I believe there were some prospectors who were on their land a few months ago who have filed reports with Leviticus Cornwall and the state government claiming huge reserves of oil under their land.
So, you want me to try and steal it?
Obviously they can't. And even more obviously, I would be useless.
And so we find ourselves back dealing with Cornwall's contribution to the struggles of the Wapiti Reservation. Rain's Fall is trying everything to save their land, going through the proper channels as to avoid provoking conflict, and it appears the officials of Saint Denis are giving them a bit of a runaround. So naturally we're tasked with heading back up to Cornwall Kerosene and Tar to meet up with Eagle Flies and steal evidence that proves that prospectors are operating on the reservation's land. Something that, if you recall all the way back to robbing Leviticus Cornwall's private railway car, we know to be the truth.
There's a foreman. His name is Danbury. There's the files in the office above the refinery room. It's that window with the blind drawn up.
I see it.
If the files are as incriminating as we believe, Mr. Cornwall's men will destroy them if they know you're coming.
There's only one of me, son. I don't intend for them to know I'm coming. What will the files say?
There'll be a report from Leyland Oil Development Company.
And you got the money?
Yes.
Any ideas how I sneak into this place?
You could crawl under the fence or hide in a wagon. They keep rolling in.
I'll go take a look.
If there's a problem, call for me.
I thought the whole point was that this had nothing to do with you.
Ideally.
You must be Danbury.
What?
Will you be quiet? I need a file by the Leyland Oil Development Company. The one about the oil near Wapiti. Danbury, think, man. A mind is a terrible thing to lose, especially over such a nice floor as this.
It's here! It's here!
You're doing good, Danbury. Real good. They'll give you a promotion for this. Nope. Danbury.
Danbury? Danbury, you okay?
Tell the guard you're fine.
Yes. All's fine.
Now stay quiet. Or head office will send me back to get you.
Unfortunately, Eagle Fly's plan to get in and out undetected goes a bit wrong, no doubt doing some harm to the situation. However, as a consolation, he causes some explosions so Arthur can escape. Unfortunately, not without having to lay waste to more of Cornwall's men. How many of these guys does he have?
I thought you wasn't getting involved.
Thought you were gonna enter and leave silently.
Thank you. You saved my life.
Thank you. I hope. Well, I don't know what I hope. But who knows? Maybe these will be of some use.
Anyway, here's what the newspaper has to say about this excursion. Massive explosions, robbery at Cornwall facility, many dead or dying. A peaceful night was split in two as explosions rocked Cornwall kerosene and tar in the heartlands of New Hanover. In the ensuing chaos, a gang of criminals breached the perimeter and headed towards the office safe. According to the foreman, the robbers were not interested in stealing cash, instead they sought important business documents from the safe. They were discovered mid-heist, and a spectacular gun battle ensued. Numerous guards were killed and others gravely wounded as the unscrupulous bandits fled. Local law enforcement do not have any leads or motives, but report to be forming organised posses and militias to comb the surrounding area. So, as far as publicity is concerned, the Wapiti get away with avoiding any bad press with regards to commissioning this robbery. However, I have a very hard time believing Cornwall isn't aware of the purpose of Arthur's visit. After all, he interrogated a foreman regarding a very specific topic, and that foreman survived. Therefore, I think it's more likely Cornwall doesn't want his interest in the reservation to be public knowledge. At least not yet, and even if to some extent it is public knowledge, to have as few eyeballs on it as possible. Therefore, his outfit has given a fairly vague explanation to the press. Not that the Wapiti need any help being vilified by the press as is. However, it would seem that is the least of their worries, and Leviticus Cornwall isn't their only concern, as the reservation is also grappling with the United States Army. Anyway, our next run-ins with anything Cornwall related occur in Chapter 6. Up near Beaver Hollow, the camp in Chapter 6, we can find a Central Union Railway camp attempting to build a new line. We can ingratiate ourselves by helping the foreman uncover a thief in his midst, which isn't hugely important to today's video, but it will unlock a second encounter if we return at a later date, in which work on the new line has hit a bit of a roadblock.
We are scuppered this time. Properly scuppered. The land up ahead got bought out from under us and we can't finish the track. Yeah, they won't admit it, but I just know this is old Leviticus Cornwall's doing. It has to be. Would you, talk to them for me? I'll pay you well, I promise.
Cornwall, you say? All right, I'll talk to them. But it may take a little convincing.
You do whatever you need to do.
So Cornwall's men are attempting to obstruct the construction of this railway, chiefly by buying a small parcel of land in the track's way, meaning we'll have to go and give them a good talking to, or this project, though exploitative in its own right, will be done for.
Hey you, what are you doing here? This is private property, you're trespassing.
Well, the boys at the railroad camp, they don't seem too happy. Looks like you're in their way.
We own this land, so they ain't going any further.
Oh, you gonna live here all happily ever after, is that it?
What's it to you?
You can drop the act. Everyone knows you're Cornwall's nursemaid, so why don't you run on home and go wash his fat feet?
What the hell did you just say? You better start running, you son of a bitch.
Must have got it wrong then. Apologies, boys. You know what? On second thoughts...
Hey,
And just like that, the thugs have been sorted and the deed to the land has been acquired. I suppose this event demonstrates Cornwall's continued willingness to sabotage other businesses. He doesn't like having competition because that will force him to be competitive on price. Holding a monopoly in the region allows him to charge whatever he wants. And he doesn't rightly care who's harmed in the process. His ruthless tactics certainly venture far beyond the realm of fair play. Arguably, fairness has very little to do with it. And with that sorted, it's time to head to Annesburg, where it's apparent that Cornwall has business interests. For in this town we can find a mine operated by Archibald Jameson, and if you recall back to the train robbery in Chapter 1, Cornwall had an interest in his business. We, however, aren't here to tour a mine he has a stake in as such.
Well, Cornwall's why we're here. Shall we, Dutch?
Yeah, it's time to go. Let's head to the river.
Oh, leave Cornwall alone. He ain't... We need money, but revenge? Now?
Of course it's for money.
Come on, Arthur.
This better not be no stupid revenge mission, Dutch. It ain't worth it.
Don't be ridiculous.
Oh, Arthur, it's just a simple social call.
So, what are we gonna say to him that needs to be said?
He has been hunting us since Valentine. He is the reason that Hosea got killed. His sugar business is destroying the people of Guarma. This town, Arthur, it's his town. He bought it just to destroy these folks. His sugar, his oil, his law.
These are wrongs that you can't right, Dutch. We're wanted men.
We want out, and Cornwall wants us to stop robbing him, and we all know his money is what's keeping the Pinkertons on our tail. He's America, Arthur, and I want out, and he won't let us go.
This ain't making a lot of sense, Dutch.
It will, son. It will. A deal, some noise, and then we're gone.
And sure enough, before too long at the docks, Cornwall's private yacht turns up.
I want to thank you for your hospitality, Mr. Cornwall.
This was a business meeting, Mr. Milton. We are not friends. I have spent a considerable fortune with your agency, and still nothing. This Vanderland robs me and laughs at me. I asked for the best. I paid for the best.
We are very close, Mr. Cornwall. I know you've heard this before.
Chance, sir, send a telegram to Goldberg in New York. Tell him I won't borrow it more than 3.2%. Sorry, no, I have heard it before. And get that army man to pay his portage charge.
Yes, sir. We are doing all we can within the confines of the law.
The law? I think we both know what you can do with your law. Find me Dutch Vanderland. Bring him here. And leave the laws to them as need them. Good day, sir.
I think this interaction clarifies Cornwall's attitude more than anything. He believes himself to be above the law. This being the second and final time we meet the man, it's also an opportunity to gauge his personality. He's a very shouty man, perhaps even a tad on the abusive side. This cutscene also serves as confirmation that Cornwall is funding the Pinkertons in going after us, which reveals his vindictive streak for all to see, though to be fair to the guy, we do rob him a lot.
Mr. Didsbury! Mr. Cornwall.
Now listen up, Didsbury. What's all this about strikes? I bought into this mine because of mismanagement, and I intend to make it a success no matter what the cost.
It's the wages. Folk feel that you...
Feel? Business doesn't give two figs about feelings, sir, not two figs. It's a nonsense that will bring a plague on both our houses, sir.
Perhaps there is a plague on your house already, Mr. Cornwall.
What do you want, sir?
I'm not quite sure just yet.
Your impudence will be your undoing, sir.
I'm undone already. Even my best friend here, he thinks I'm crazy. And like this poor fellow you are talking to, my feelings are hurt.
You robbed me, sir.
And you robbed him. Funny world.
You show a criminal's grasp of sophistry, sir. I did no such thing.
You kill. I kill. You rob. I rob. Only difference I can see is I choose whom I kill and rob, and you destroy everything in your path.
I've heard just about enough.
I'll tell you what. You give me this ship, $10,000, and safe passage out of here, I'll let you live.
I'll do no such thing!
You sure? Good. I prefer it this way.
You lost your man! Noise, Arthur! Noise!
And with that, Leviticus Cornwall the man is dead. Dutch van der Linde hated him because of what he represented, not necessarily because he was a bad man, as Dutch was a bad man too. However, Dutch viewed America as an apathetic, if not cutthroat place, simply disguised as civilized, and nobody represents that better than Leviticus Cornwall, who despite his outward business-like appearance, left a trail of destruction not dissimilar to Dutch himself. Cornwall as a character isn't so important to Dutch, and I'd argue as a result Leviticus Cornwall is hardly a villain. Antagonistic as he is, the idea of Leviticus Cornwall is more powerful, and that's what Dutch viewed as the embodiment of all that he hates in society. He was but a representation of the corporate greed that strips away the freedom of working people. But the thing about ideas is they hardly ever die with men. As noteworthy an event as Cornwall's murder is, his demise does the gang no favours. The Pinkertons still gun for them with more ruthlessness than ever before. The army, as backed by Cornwall, kerosene and tar, still cause mayhem for the Wapiti. The army continuously attempt to take their land from under them, resulting in bloodshed and a massive destructive battle in the oil fields that forced the Wapiti to move regardless. And if anything, Dutch furthers that problem, seeing it as an opportunity.
What are we looking for? Money, you fool. The money. There's state bonds here. Lots of them. I thought you were paying attention. Old Cornwall had a deal with the state. He was being paid to develop the region against the federal government's wishes, as they didn't want problems with the Indians. Anyway.
So we get it, and we're done? We're almost free?
Yes. If we're right.
And so, despite Cornwall's passing, nothing really changes. The Pinkertons still see to the gang's disbandment, and the Wapiti still end up going to war with the army. So much for cutting the head off the snake. You see, Leviticus Cornwall may very well have been a cunning, ruthless robber baron, but the one thing he wasn't was unique, and there will always be others to come and complete his greedy, morally grey, sometimes criminal work. In the epilogue, we learn the oil reserves identified at the Wapiti reservation turned up dry, and as a result, the site was abandoned. Ultimately, Cornwall undermined the federal government and drove these poor people from their homes for nothing. As for his various businesses, they get absorbed under other names, likely run by very similar people. And the name Leviticus Cornwall is but a memory. And in his place, there are now countless others likely doing the same thing. And by that I mean whatever it takes to become as wealthy and powerful as humanly possible. Mr. Cornwall was just the example the game chose to convey the existence of these individuals, these companies, these institutions, to demonstrate the thin line between outlaw and fine American, and to contrast Dutch and show the advancement of human society, the very encroachment of human civilization, the very sophistication of both what it means to be good and bad, as humanity plunges deeper and deeper into a world of grey. And that is where I'm going to leave today's video. Thank you for putting up with me for what has been an hour, and depending on how much you like me, may have felt like a very long one, if you've managed to get to this point. But if you did enjoy, please go ahead, leave a like, subscribe, share the channel with your friends, all that wonderful stuff. It would be massively appreciated. And let me know what other topics, if any, you'd like to see covered, whether it be in Red Dead Redemption, Grand Theft Auto, or some other series that I'm trying to get up and running. I've got a Skyrim and a Fallout one these days, that's pretty nice. No matter, with any luck I'll be seeing you all very soon with another video at some point, but until next time, please take care, and goodbye.